Welcome to the UPSC Radio Lab. This is a special series for the CSAT preparation. This will be aired free as video lectures instead of the usual audio podcast on our channel for free. For detailed courses, please check the description box below. Whenever it comes to CSAT preparation, we always know there are different terminologies and confusions with regard to passage questions. This happens especially when we have one passage, one lengthy passage and one MCQ. So basically it will be long sentences that goes up to 4 or 5 lines, or it will be 4 to 5 sentences of a passage, and then there is just one single question asked. For example, inference, crux, conclusion, critical idea, sum up, etc. There is always a confusion with regard to so many similar terminologies while answering such passages. Here at UPSC Radio Lab, we are going to help you to understand the differences and thus answer your questions with ease. It always happens with many of the students who are very used to the bullet point kind of notes to solve passages difficult. This happens because you're not used to getting in depth of a particular passage, and the easiest and the only possible solution for this is to read the newspaper columns and the editorials. If not the big ones, no, just ignore the big ones. Do not waste your time reading the big editorials for a long time and investigating it. The shorter columns, the smaller columns, and the editorials that come on in the right side of the editorial column in the Hindu, you can go through that and read it carefully and try to understand the inferences. Only through this you will be able to analyze points easily. You do not have a shortcut to read. Whenever the passage question comes, the first thing that you need to do is read the passage. As soon as you read the passage and you read the question, when you read the question, you will know what kind of question it is, which we will discuss in detail in the coming videos, whether it is inference or assumption or implication or conclusion, etc. So before you try and come to eliminate the answers and try and understand which is the answer, you can follow a very common method, which is the T method. That is the column method. So you draw a column. It can be for and against. Now don't think, why am I asking you to draw a column? I completely understand none of you are going to have time to sit and draw the column. It is just that you go through the option and you know which is for and which is against. You can definitely have points in the passage that is for and against. You mark it down, and then it is easy to eliminate the answer when it comes to which is the most crucial inference, which is the crux idea, etc. So you can use the for and the against elements to deduce the answer. Today we are going to discuss the most confused words, inference and conclusion. Inference and conclusion are different. You cannot mark answer as inference when it comes to conclusion or vice versa, which simply means inference and conclusion is not interchangeable. Now, what is an inference? Inference is using facts to determine other facts. It need not be, or it is not a final conclusion that you arrive at. The inference can be logical, it can be illogical, it can be accurate, inaccurate, correct, incorrect, etc. It can be adequate, it can be inadequate. So an inference need not be complete and help you to understand the whole scenario. It is just an element, or it is just a step towards conclusion. Whereas a conclusion is a final judgment or a statement of that particular passage, or what does this what does this passage conclude, or what does this passage give a verdict or a final statement, or one of the final statements. It can conclude many things, and the conclusion also need not be one alone. There is a simple technique to differentiate between inference and conclusion. Whenever we talk of inference, it always moves from a specific point to a general point, whereas a conclusion moves from general point to specific point. So remember, they are in opposite directions when it comes to approach. Now let me put you through a very simple example. Meera dried her sweaty palms on her trunks. She took a deep breath. She looked down the ramp and shivered. It was a steep drop, but she had to go on. All around were staring at her. She put down her skateboard and got ready. She could do it. Now, the first question. What evidence helps you to infer that Meera was nervous? The option below asks she put her skateboard down and got ready. Is that an inference? No, it is already there that she has put her skateboard down. So it is not an inference, it is an information that is already present in the paragraph. Number 2, her palms were sweaty. Usually, when does your palms sweat? When you are nervous. So probably number 2 could indicate, or from option 2 you can infer that Meera was nervous. 3, she looked down the ramp. Now, number 3, when we say she looked down the ramp, it can be thought as an inference. But she looked down on the ramp nervously, or her eyes were wide open looking at the ramp. If such extra additions are there to the sentence, then maybe number 3 could be an option. And 4 is she could do it. It is not an inference. It is not an inference that she was nervous. It is an inference that she finally had the courage to do it. So inference that Meera was nervous will be her palms were sweaty. So inference that Meera was nervous will be her palms were sweaty. The scientists tested their new chemicals on the mice. In a matter of an hour, the mice turned bluish green and died out of choking. Now the inference for this passage is as simple as the chemical is harmful to mice. It is just an inference. Whereas when you go for a conclusion, it would be the chemical caused the death of mice through lungs blockage, or the chemical causes lungs blockage because of which the mice died. I hope you can understand the difference. The inference is just about the chemical being harmful, whereas the conclusion is being specific. The conclusion is being specific about what happened to the mice because of the chemical. Is it just death, or how did the death occur? Now we'll take an example from one of the previous year's question paper. This is one of the questions from the year 2016. We are witnessing a dangerous dwindling of biodiversity in our food supply. The Green Revolution is a mixed blessing. Over time, farmers have come to rely heavily on broadly adapted high-yielding crops to the exclusion of varieties adapted to the local conditions. Monocropping vast fields in the same genetically uniform seeds helps boost yield and meet immediate hunger needs. Yet, high-yield varieties are also genetically weaker crops that require expensive chemical fertilizers and toxic pesticides. In our focus on increasing the amount of food we produce today, we have accidentally put ourselves at risk for food shortages in future. Which among the following is the most logical and critical inference that can be made from the above passage? So there is option A, B, C, D. Option A, in our agricultural practices, we have become heavily dependent on expensive chemical fertilizers and toxic pesticides only due to Green Revolution. Monocropping vast field with high-yield varieties is possible due to Green Revolution. Option C, monocropping with high-yield varieties is the only way to ensure food security to millions. And D, Green Revolution can pose a threat to biodiversity in food supply and food security in the long run. Now, let us decode the options one by one. In option A, in our agricultural practices, we have become heavily dependent on expensive chemical fertilizers and toxic pesticides only due to Green Revolution. See, the scenario is true, but it is not only due to Green Revolution, so it cannot be the most logical and critical inference. So we'll eliminate A. In option B, monocropping vast fields with high-yield varieties is possible due to Green Revolution. Again, true, but it is not the most critical inference. It might be logical but not critical. Now we need to know both logical as well as critical. Does this particular statement become the inference of the whole passage is what we have to understand. Because if this becomes the main statement, then there is no point of talking about fertilizers, there is no point of talking about high yield varieties being genetically weaker and the risk of food shortages. So B also can be eliminated. Now talking about C. Monocropping with high yield varieties is the only way to ensure food security to millions. It is the only way to ensure is not mentioned anywhere in the passage. So again, option C also can be eliminated. Now you can come to D telling that the first three options are eliminated. But looking at it more critically, green revolution can pose a threat to biodiversity in food supply and food security in the long run. See, the word green revolution moves from being specific to general. Monocropping is specific, but green revolution is general. When we talk about green revolution, monocropping comes in. Then because of monocropping, the fertilizers, pesticides, everything comes in. And it poses a threat to biodiversity because of use of chemicals, fertilizers, and also genetically they are not diverse. It becomes weak. They are weaker plants. So it is a threat to biodiversity, and because there is threat to biodiversity, there is threat to food supply and food security. In long run, there will be a shortage of food. So this is the inference. So we are moving entirely from specific points to a generalized point. We'll see such similar questions with examples from previous question papers in the next video. Hope this has helped you, and let us know by liking the video and subscribing to the channel.